This is Euronews Now. I'm Helena Humphrey. Here are your headlines. Ukraine says 9 Russian warplanes were destroyed in the Crimea blasts, but has not claimed responsibility for the explosions. Dozens of people are still missing after a migrant boat sinks off the coast of Greece. And as another heat wave grips Europe, thousands are evacuated from their homes in France as another wave of wildfires ravage forests.
Residents of the Ukrainian city of Marganets are counting the cost of the latest round of Russian shelling. At least 13 people died in the strike. Kyiv claims the rockets were fired from the territory of the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, which lies just across the Dnipro River. Russian troops control the plant and have been accused by Ukraine of turning it into a military base from which to fire missiles, knowing it's too risky for Ukraine to fire back. There have been numerous skirmishes near the atomic plant where several shells have already fallen, putting the international community on edge, fearing a nuclear catastrophe. Russia blames Ukraine and has requested today's urgent meeting of the UN Security Council in New York to discuss the situation. At the same time, G7 nations have demanded that Russia must immediately hand back control of the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant to Ukraine. They accuse Moscow's forces of putting the entire region in danger. Earlier this week, a Ukrainian military official said safety at the plant couldn't be guaranteed because there are armed Russians there overseeing Ukrainian technicians, but the power plant units themselves are generally protected. On another front, there is growing pressure on Europe to ban Russian tourists. Echoing his president, Ukraine's foreign minister tweeted he wants international bodies to stop issuing visas to Russians. Visiting Europe is a privilege, not a human right for holidaymakers. Meanwhile, more Russian shelling in the country's northeast has left 2 people dead in the village of Stary Soltiv in the Kharkiv region.
Finnish defence forces are engaged in joint exercises with the US Navy just days after the Senate in Washington voted near unanimously to ratify Finland and Sweden joining NATO. Even though Finland has practiced with NATO for the last 30 years, joint drills have been stepped up following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It's the first time the USS Kearsarge has been in Finnish waters. The task of coordinating troops and weaponry is one of the big challenges of Finland's NATO membership. This week, Polish troops are training on American-made Abrams tanks. Poland is contracted to buy 250 of them in a stated move to strengthen its armed forces in light of what it calls a Russian threat. At the last NATO summit, its Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg said the alliance faces a new security reality and it needed to reset its deterrence and defence for the longer term. An emphasis on equipping and training appears to be part of that reset.
It's now feared dozens of people have died off the coast of Greece after their boat sank while attempting to cross the Mediterranean. An air and sea rescue operation that began Wednesday morning managed to pick up 29 people after their vessel sank in stormy waters. The tragedy happened after the boat left Turkey on Tuesday night. The boat was en route to Italy from Antalya in southern Turkey, an increasingly popular passage for those attempting to get to Europe. The people rescued from the waters are said to be Afghan, Iranian, and Iraqi nationals, according to one official. No one on board was reportedly wearing a life jacket. Since January, 64 people have died in the eastern Mediterranean, and 8 people died off the Greek island of Mykonos on June 19th, and 108 more were rescued. A huge wildfire that has destroyed more than a dozen homes and forced the evacuation of thousands of residents is sweeping through the Gironde region of southwestern France. Authorities believe the latest inferno is the result of so-called zombie fires, a former blaze which lies smoldering in peaty soil and then flares up again.
It's likely that the fire spread underground and then started again in areas that were still green, and at that point the fire, also because of the dryness of the vegetation and the extremely low humidity, started again very quickly and re-inflamed the pines.
Around 1,000 firefighters are tackling the fire, which has ravaged 6,000 hectares of pine forest since Tuesday afternoon. The sweltering temperatures sweeping Europe and the accompanying lack of rain are affecting major rivers. Officials in Germany are warning that water levels on the Rhine River could reach a critical low in the coming days. It will make the transport of goods along the river, including coal and gasoline, increasingly difficult. And in England, where the health warning due to the heat has been issued, it now seems the official source of the River Thames has dried up. The driest start to a year in decades has shifted the source of this English river several miles downstream, leaving scorched earth and the occasional puddle where water once flowed.
Germany has been hit by a severe drought all across the country. Here in Berlin, several lakes have reached a critical water level, to the point where even the River Spree, this big river that is flowing through the capital city, is flowing in the wrong direction at certain parts, flowing back into these lakes. But it's obviously not just a problem here around Berlin, it is a problem in other parts of the country as well. The mighty river Rhine that cuts through the country has almost dried out at certain places, and this is becoming a problem for the German industry. A lot of cargo is still shipped along this river, and the cargo ships just simply can't operate at the level that they normally would. Most cargo ships can now only take 30% of the amount of cargo that they would normally take, because the river is simply so shallow at places that they can't travel on it with the normal load. And that is becoming a problem for the German industry here, an industry that has already been hit by the corona crisis and by the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and now hit by a drought. Jonah Kalgren, Euronews, Berlin.
Germany wants to raise income tax thresholds in response to the highest inflation in the country in decades. As residents feel the pinch from soaring food and energy prices, electricity and more, the Finance Ministry says it will also slightly increase child benefits, hoping to provide some relief after the 8.5% inflation hike last month.
For many people, everyday life has become far too expensive. We fear that gas, energy and food prices will rise. At the same time, our country's economic prospects have become fragile, and forecasts for economic growth have to be revised downwards. We are therefore in a position where action is needed.
In Scandinavia, prices of goods and services in Denmark have increased by an average of 13.2% in the past year, the highest annual increase since 1982. Norway's July figures have marked a historically high price increase for food and non-alcoholic beverages. But there's better news from the other side of the Atlantic. US President Joe Biden says inflation is showing signs of moderating, but more work is needed to make consumers' lives easier.
It is well on track due to the bond process. General Jones.